To get back into real economics requires a revolution for civilization. The choice presented here is between two opposite systems, only one of which meets the criteria for being called an economic system. One produces tangible wealth, the other produces destruction and illusion. It is obvious which of the two is the real economic system. An economic system exists to fulfill the physical needs of society. This defines the reality principle of economics. The reality principle in economics is generally deemed not to exist. But this is a false perception. The reality principle in economics is totally real, though it is rarely understood. It is built on the premise that no society in the world needs to be begging to the money bags of empire in order to produce a richer world for itself, when it can give itself the power to issue currency or credit for the purpose of building whatever infrastructures and industries it needs to make itself productive. Who needs the money bags when society can create its own money or credit to create what is required? Society has been forever independent from the money bags of empire, though this is slow to become accepted. The money that a society creates for its productive purposes gains its value by the products that are thereby created. On this path all win. The reality principle, or credit society principle, as it is also called, renders an economic system inherently anti-Olympic. In this system the value of the money is real and tangible, because the products it facilitated are real and tangible for the whole of society, while the system creates a richer world. A real economic system is therefore an infinite system. By this system, the more society is producing, the richer it becomes. The question then will no longer be asked if a certain project is too expensive to build. The prevailing question then will be, what else can we build to make ourselves still richer in terms of creating a richer world? In this context, money becomes a secondary issue. It becomes merely the facilitator of the processes of building. A kind of supply item that is created as needed to get the job done. This type of wealth-creating system qualifies for being a real economic system. It was first implemented in Massachusetts in the mid-1600s. It later became the model that the USA was founded on. It is the model of the crown. Many times in American history the crown was laid aside for the cross. The masters of empire literally stole America's crown and drew society back under its yoke, where it has become impotent and subjected to great suffering. The suffering is real, because the system of empire is not an economic system, as it is often falsely called. It is a system of thievery. It is not in the nature of empire to create or produce anything that meets society's needs unless the process can be used as an instrument for looting. The wealth of empire is stolen by clever contractual agreements, usury, property rights, speculation, gambling, and by tearing society down into poverty, by which empire steals its property at auction. On this road society is collapsing. Its productive power is collapsing. Its physical economy is collapsing. It is not possible for a society that is constantly being looted not to collapse. A non-collapse is not possible. No means exists for society to avoid its collapse, except to step away from the entire system of empire as fast as possible. The system of empire is designed for society to lose, and for the masters of empire to win. The system of empire is an Olympic system where only one can win, leaving a trail of losers in the wake, and this one who wins is empire that controls the game. But what empire wins is not real. Its winning collapses the physical processes, which thereby collapses the wealth that the masters have stolen. It is not possible to win by stealing. The assumption is an illusion. Point A on this chart represents the illusion of wealth that empire wins for itself at the expense of society. It wins an illusion because in the process of winning, which is really a process of stealing, it collapses the physical economy that alone produces real wealth. The illusion of winning sadly hides the collapsing state of real wealth in the world. Its real state is represented by point B. The farther that point A and point B diverge, the more empty and fragile the system becomes, and more prone to a sudden collapse, like the collapse for which $35 trillion in bailout monies were demanded to keep up the impression that the dead corpse of the collapsed system is still alive. Point B marks the current state of all the physical aspects of society's living. The productive aspects that are collapsing further and further. Point C is the point, and the only point, where society can have a prosperous existence. To get from point B, where society is presently at, to point C, where its living would be secure, a revolutionary breakout in productive activity will have to occur on all fronts: in housing, food production, energy production, transportation, employment, education, healthcare, and social support. The accumulated needs have become horrendous. Few people are willing to acknowledge that we are at point B in all essential categories. People like to believe that society exists at point A, but dreaming does not change the world, no matter how strongly people believe the dream to be true. Thus, society itself is mentally anchored in the dream world at point A, the point of illusion. The illusion is presently maintained by force, such as the flood of bailout money that props up the illusion that financial values can exist without a physical equivalent. But step by step, reality shines through that no matter how much money is pumped into the financial system, the sum of it represents nothing more than the physical equivalent that has been largely destroyed. In 2007, the illusion began to collapse that the financial world can have value independent of the physical productive process. Huge tremors then shook the entire system of illusions that point A represents. The collapse of the illusion was halted in 2008 with the bailout process. But the bailout process, too, is now collapsing. Because the printing of more money simply doesn't add anything of real value. Nothing helps, or has helped. Nothing was rescued when this huge stack of bailout money was thrown into the trough for the thieves, which, when piled up in $100 bills, is so huge that it would stretch 3/4 the way around the world when laid on its side. When the bailout process stops completely, which ultimately cannot be maintained for long, then point A drops down to point B, and there will be crying in the streets. When this chaotic implosion happens, 99% of society's pensions will vanish. Millionaires and billionaires will vanish likewise. Nothing will remain as an item of value except that which has an equivalent in the physical economy. At point B, this point is presently at an extremely low level. An orderly breakout from this trap is still possible. It can be achieved without the collapse of society occurring, which otherwise cannot be avoided. The shift requires a change in society's intention from supporting imperial monetarism to becoming a credit society. The breakout of intention must be to cancel monetarism completely in all aspects of economics. In 1933, this breakout was accomplished in the USA with a piece of legislation that prevented the banks from utilizing society's money, savings, deposits, and equity for speculative purposes. The legislation became famous. It is named after its sponsors, the Glass-Steagall legislation. It was among the first acts of the Franklin Roosevelt administration. It worked to some degree. The Glass-Steagall legislation was enacted together with a far-flung credit commitment to physical development, which the legislation made possible. The resulting historic breakout from empire quickly ended the Great Depression. It provided employment and social protection, and a rigorous protection of society from looting by empire. With it, the resulting new credit society system built up the nation to become the richest on the planet and the envy of the world. The outcome wasn't perfect, but it was a good start. This start that changed the world for more than a decade was betrayed in the post-war period with the hidden resurgence of empire and its monetarism. Under imperial pressure, the Glass-Steagall breakout from empire was gradually destroyed. The destruction started with the Depository Institutions Deregulation and Monetary Control Act of 1980, which was followed 2 years later by the Germain Depository Institutions Act of 1982. Each step took away a part of the hard-won protection of society. The death knell was given with the final repeal of it through the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act of 1999. From this point on, grand thievery was legal once again. The economic collapse that is now gripping the world would not have occurred had the protection of society with the Glass-Steagall legislation not been repealed. We are now at a point where the reality principle has been fully scrapped and the old imperial monetary system been fully re-established. With the reality principle taken out of the realm of economics, the economic collapse process that had earlier created the Great Depression of the 1930s was re-established in full and supported from the highest places in the world. In modern time, the total and final collapse of the system of empire has been held back with several increments of insanity, with increasing lies, fudging of figures, and of late the bailouts. This means that the unavoidable total collapse still lies before us. When the collapsing system finally falls, the fall will be inevitably worse, like that of a great avalanche that has been building up for a long time and then begins to move when its weight becomes unsustainable. A non-collapse of an escalating looting system like the present world financial system is not possible under any circumstances. And this is where we are at. Society has been looted to the point that it is barely able to exist. The gap between wages and prices has become huge. Housing has become unaffordable to ever more people, and those who still have a roof over their head have become slaves to a process that claims an ever larger chunk of their earnings just to have a place to live, while the entire economic system thereby becomes hollow. This trend adds up to an avalanche on a scale that no one can forecast or imagine. There is a growing movement now afoot to get the Glass-Steagall legislation reinstated as an emergency measure to prevent the total blowout of the financial and economic system via a controlled bankruptcy reorganization that simply writes off all the gambling debts and protects what is left of the real economy on which people's living depends. The movement is designed to take down the illusion to the level of reality, to simply zero out what is fake, so that the rebuilding of the economy can begin, and to protect it. The stakes are high without even considering the looming Ice Age challenge. It might well be that nothing short of the Ice Age challenge will provide the needed impetus for society to step away from the thievery of empire that is increasingly crushing it. All efforts in the Glass-Steagall direction have so far failed. The movement in this direction was spearheaded by LaRouche long before the system began to crash. The movement nearly succeeded with the 2006 proposal for an Economic Recovery Act to save the automobile industry. It was followed up a year later by the proposed Homeowner and Bank Protection Act of 2007 that would have stopped the foreclosure crisis and have saved millions of people the loss of their home. Both proposals had wide support in state governments and in the population. But it was opposed in the halls of government where empire rules. Consequently, unemployment exploded, and whatever else followed, which were the real causes for the foreclosure crisis. The movement to get Glass-Steagall back in full as the latest and possibly final emergency rescue effort to avert a looming disaster had likewise wide support in the population, and still has that, but it stood against immense opposition from empire. On the strength of the growing popular support for reinstating Glass-Steagall, in May 2010, U.S. Senators Maria Cantwell and John McCain introduced a bipartisan amendment to the banking and financial reform legislation being debated in the Senate, proposing to separate commercial and investment banking, which was essentially a Glass-Steagall restoration. The amendment would likely have passed had the British Foreign Office not intervened. Insiders reported that the U.S. State Department received a warning that the successful passing of the McCain-Cantwell Glass-Steagall amendment would be